What is fresco painting? Fresco, the Italian word for fresh, is a technique of painting done typically on walls or ceilings. The technique can be done in two forms. The most popular method, referred to as the buono or true fresco, begins with a bare wall that are dampened and coated with a layer of lime plaster where the design was then sketched. Next, the painting was done in sections composed of smooth layers of plaster where the color pigments were applied directly. This method was the most popular because as the surface dries and sets, the color pigment particles are bound and cemented along with plaster particles. The second method, referred to as secco or dry fresco, begins by soaking dry finished walls with lime water. They are then painted while wet. With this method, the image painted forms a surface film on top of the wall or ceiling, rather than being embedded. The first time art of this nature had been used was during the Paleolithic era. Cave paintings, mostly consisting of images of animals and abstract symbols, have been found all across Europe and have been estimated to date back to around 40,000 BCE. Most of the cave paintings found can be centralized in the southwestern France, northern Spain region. The painting styles of cave art vary greatly, and this can be contributed to either the era or the area in which the painting was done in. At first it was believed that these paintings were simply for decoration, but it is now believed that the painted caves were used for ceremonial activities and the images on the walls and ceilings were a part of supernatural or spiritual rituals. The 17th century is known as the Baroque era. This new style that emerged in the 1600s is known for its complexity and drama and contrasts greatly from Renaissance-style pieces. Ceiling frescoes presented a different experience than looking at a painting hanging on a wall. There was considerable height and an expansive scale to cover and use. Painters in the 17th century who wanted to burnish their public image or control their legacy found monumental ceiling frescoes to be the perfect vessel. Those who commissioned these ambitious painters also used their ceiling art to portray their wealth and status. Many of the Catholic churches in Rome saw the opportunity presented by ceiling frescoes. They realized painting high above the ground offered perfect opportunities to impress on worshippers the glory and power of the Catholic Church. Michelangelo Marchese, also known as Caravaggio, helped to develop the unique style of Baroque beginning to emerge throughout Europe. Though not famously known for his ceiling frescoes, as he only produced one, Jupiter, Neptune, and Pluto, he is still worth noting. It was his use of stark and dramatic contrast of light and dark coloring within his pieces that helped to inspire many artists in the 1600s. Caravaggio was known for bringing a sense of naturalism to his pieces and depicting the objects in his pieces in a realistic manner, which is a theme that was carried out by many other Baroque artists and seen in many ceiling frescoes to follow. Annibale Carracci can also be credited as one of the originators who inspired the Baroque era. He reasserted a northern Italian emphasis on color, light, and the study of nature. He also focused on emotive communication within his pieces. In many of the paintings, the sense of deep space is created with varying light and shadow, which is in contrast to the use of linear perspective in Renaissance style. Carracci's most renowned ceiling fresco is Love of the Gods. He was commissioned by Odoardo Farnese, a wealthy descendant of Pope Paul III, to decorate the ceiling of the palace's gallery to celebrate the wedding of the cardinal's brother. The design of Carracci's fresco Love of the Gods is referred to as quadro riportato, which means transferred frame paintings, and is meant to stimulate easel paintings. The many different scenes within the frames are different interpretations of varieties of earthly and divine love found in classical mythology. He utilized the natural light from below to illuminate darker colored exterior painted figures. This gave them the appearance of being three-dimensional, whereas the use of lighter colors on the framed images allowed those figures to remain two-dimensional. Carracci drew his inspiration for Love of the Gods from Michelangelo's figures on the Sistine Chapel ceilings, Raphael's drawing style and lighting, and Titan's animated figures. Guido Reni, also known as the Divine Guido, was another 17th century painter who won over a devoted following and respect. Reni is noted for the classical idealism of his renderings of mythological and religious subjects. One of his most famous frescoes is Aurora in the Casino of Rospigliosi. Reni mimics Carracci's Love of the Gods fresco by using the quadro riportato framing style of ceiling paintings. This piece also demonstrates Reni's ability to capture fluid motion, soft molding, and sure composition. He was also known for his tempered Baroque exuberance and complexity with classical restraint. The mood of his paintings appear calm because of the use of softness in color and the form of his subjects. Reni strove towards classical harmony in which reality presented in idealized proportion. Pietro de Cortona painted many frescoes throughout his life in both churches and palaces. He was known to be influenced by antique sculptures and the work of Raphael. One of his most famous pieces was commissioned by Pope Urban VIII for the Grand Salon, the main reception hall of the Palazzo Barberini. This piece is known as the Triumph of the Barberini. The iconographic program for this fresco was designed by poet Francesco Bracciolini. The divine providence appear in a halo of radiant light, directing immortality and holding a crown of stars to bestow eternal life on the family. The three virtues, faith, hope, and charity, also appear in the piece, holding a gigantic laurel wreath around three bees, the Barberini family symbol. This fresco was intended to overwhelm spectators with the glory of the Barberini family. To do so, Cortona used the blend of illusionism, color, and movement. His skills in architecture allowed him the ability to create the illusion of height and depth to his ceiling work. In the Triumph of the Barberini, the room appears to be opening up to the skies and the heavens above. Giovanni Gauli was one of the leading Roman Baroque painters of the later half of the 17th century. He is most known for his fresco, Triumph of the Name Jesus. In this piece, Jesus was represented in the blinding radiant light floating heavenward, whereas sinners were represented in a violent descent back to earth. They are also set in the shadows of the three-dimensional stucco extensions. Gauli is known for combining an ecstatic religious figure style derived from Bernini and a melting central treatment of the heads derived from Correggio, with his own masterly organization of masses of light and shade and an attractive baraba of execution. Fra Andrea Pozzo was known as the master of perspective. He was also known for his involvement with the Catholic Counter-Reformation and his development of the trompe-l'oeil technique. His most acknowledged piece is the ceiling fresco painting Glorification of St. Ignatius of St. Ignazio. Like in many other ceiling frescoes in the 17th century, Pozzo created the illusion of height by extending the architecture of the church's walls. It makes the ceiling appear as if heaven is opening up above the congregation and the roof has been lifted off the church itself. The 17th century in Italy was full of inspiring artists and new styles. The use of color, both dark and light, was used to create the illusion of depth and shadow. Height and architecture was added and gave the illusion that the room had been extended in the space in which the piece was completed in. The subject of the pieces took on a more realistic image, and we see a natural balance of all of the pieces within the painting. The pieces themselves were used to tell a story of either wealth, immortality, or the importance of the church and religion. Because of this use, frescoes became highly sought after. They displayed the painter's ability to tell a story on such a large stage. They captivated those who gazed upon them in such a way that they felt as if they were staring into the heavens themselves. Because of their scale, color, and detail, frescoes were powerful pieces of art in the 17th century and the centuries to follow.